Good afternoon, everybody, from a kind of dreary Austin, Texas. My name's Max. My dog's name is Jax. He's back there somewhere. I want to talk about intrinsic value today. And I want to talk about my spreadsheets and how I do all the daily calculations and that kind of stuff. I don't have a script. I'm just going off the top of my head. But I had a really nice letter comment the other day from somebody that was asking about why didn't I not calculate intrinsic value. Why didn't I emphasize that more? As you guys know, I'm always obsessed with the capture. How many basis points do we capture? Was it a 0.5%? Was it a percent? Anyway, and I thought I wanted to explain myself. So going forward, I'm making the spreadsheets better, and I will track intrinsic and extrinsic. The reason I don't emphasize it that much is because it's included in the capture. The intrinsic is already factored in. I could easily make another column next to where it says intrinsic and divide the dollar amount of the intrinsic by the price of the index and come up with the percent in the money. All intrinsic means is that your option's in the money. If you look at this Russell spreadsheet or IWMY spreadsheet, you can see today they sold a 2015 strike price put. Well, yesterday's close was 2,051. It's right here. So the difference between those two, which is $14.49, is the in the money amount. Even that number is not really a real number because we don't know what time they sold this option. They sell these options towards the end of the day. I'm just making the assumption that I'm just comparing it with the day's closing price to give us something to shoot at. The real intrinsic that they were able to capture may have been a little bit more or a little bit less. The thing is, though, anyway, I was going to say I could build a separate column and we could look at the in the money amount, but to look at that and it's kind of a red herring to look at the in the money amount and think that that's what they're capturing to defend the NAV because it's all included in the overall capture. It's double counting to actually look at the intrinsic. Now, I know Jay said that he wanted to pay out the extrinsic. And so that's why I'm not saying it's not important, but you don't need to, I don't think you need to look at it separately. However, of course, I'm going to keep calculating it. And especially towards the end of the month, whenever it's time to make an estimate, we're going to talk about it more. And maybe at the end of the month, I will add it up and factor it in. But just as far as daily type cheerleading stuff, I want these to be fast and efficient. And so I look at it two different ways. You capture a percent amount. That's the way I like to look at it because some of these ETFs have different prices. But so you can also look at the cents you capture. So look at today. So for instance, today on the Russell or the IWMY, they're going for 177 basis point capture. That is insane. That's all I need to know. It doesn't matter that the intrinsic's $15. I mean, the intrinsic was $13 the other day, and they captured all of it too. It's double counting to worry too much about the intrinsic, is all I'm saying. So you can also look at it, but if some people don't like to think in terms of percentages, if you want to think in terms of dollars and cents, 177 basis points or 1.77% equals 37 cents a share. And that's how they pay your dividends out is in cents per share. So that's why I show that too. That might be an easier way to look at it. But I show them both. Now look at this. So I don't usually, this is my old spreadsheet. The new one won't be like this, but I was just seeing how much the dividend would pay if IWMY paid a dividend today. So what I did is I added up their capture and I averaged it. And I did not include today's because we haven't captured today's yet. So after today, if they capture that, it's going to go up. But I did that, and then so that's a percent that you capture every day. There's 250 business days in a year. So you multiply the capture percentage by 250, and look what you get. The IWMY is on pace to pay 164% dividend. Think about that. And that's not factoring in treasuries. But it's also not factoring in intrinsic versus extrinsic. But we can deal with all that stuff. But 164%, my Lord. And that's absolutely insane. I'm trying to tell you guys, I'm not worried as much about whether these things pay 65% or 68%. I'm a big picture guy, but I'm worried about if they're paying 68% versus 48%. I'm trying to see how the manager's strategy is going and make sure their overall strategy's on track. It's not like these details are not important. Like I say, and when we get close to the end of the month, I will start factoring them in more. But that's the reason I don't talk too much about intrinsic versus extrinsic on a daily basis. The other thing that's important to know is if you make a winning option trade, you always capture extrinsic. Extrinsic is the out of the money part. Or if an option expires worthless, you're gonna capture extrinsic and intrinsic if it expires worthless. Lots of times you have to buy the option back. Well, even when you have to buy the option back for something and you make money, you always get the extrinsic. You never get the intrinsic, or sometimes you don't get the intrinsic. Last month there was about 90% of the capture was extrinsic. The other 10% was intrinsic. So I just allow for 10 or 15%. Last month, look at QQQY. I had them earning about $1 total capture. So you take off 10%, that's 90 cents. I don't keep track of the treasuries, but you add in another 3 or 4 points for that because they pay 3 or 4%, sometimes 5, but some of them are a little bit older. So add in 3 or 4%. Well, what's 3 or 4% plus 90? It's 93 or 94, which is, and I think the fund paid 93. So you can get close enough. I can anyway. I'm going to be able to tell you guys within a few pennies, I believe, without having to worry too much about the details. I just want to see if freaking this IWMY can keep this up for the rest of the month. Could you imagine what's going to happen if they did keep up on this pace and they paid a dividend that like this? It's going to set the world on fire. It's going to give so many people FOMO. My goodness. Anyway, things probably won't continue like this. So maybe they're going to have a good first half of the month and a bad second half. But that's why I report on it every day, so we can track it and we can cheerlead. Here's something else. So for the people that want to think in cents per share, I added up all the cents per share they've captured, and subtracted the ones they lost. Well, it's $1.83 the total. So if you take off 10% or 10 or 15% to allow for the intrinsic versus the extrinsic capture, it's still $1.55. Now that doesn't include treasuries, but add in 5 cents for treasuries. You're looking at $1.60 right now. That's for your dividend, and that equates to about 164%. So in any event, it should be good news. All right, I'll stop going on and on about that. Let's take a look at the market real quick while I got you here. All right, so let's look at the Russell because we were talking about the IWMY. Stay on. Okay, so here's what happened. Russell opened kind of flat, right in the middle of the profit box and sold off, and now it's under the profit box. So if they had to close this right now, that would be a small loss in the Russell. So, but anyway, I'm hoping they get that. I'm hoping they get that 1.77%, but we'll see. But I also always tell you guys, you can look at the size of the profit box. You can look how tall it is, and that's a visual representation of how much premium they got. If the profit boxes are smaller, shorter that way, they like it like this day's. It's not as tall as this day's. You could say visually that option didn't have as much premium in it. It wasn't as juicy. But this one they sold for today was, my goodness, that's just absolutely incredible. This one down here you can also see was a lot of premium. Anyway, the Russell's unique because for some reason their premiums are going up as the stock goes up. That's usually not the way it works. Generally, as the NDX and SPX appreciate, the volatility comes down, and then these boxes get really thin and little, and you don't capture as much. But the Russell is just in a really good spot for some reason right now. But they're losing right now. We'll see how today turns out. Let's look over here at the SPX. All right, SPX, good one there. It's right in the middle. So this is an example of intrinsic versus extrinsic. If it closes where it is here today, the yellow box is the extrinsic amount. The green part is the intrinsic amount. So if it closes where we are right here, their profit is between the bottom line and where it closes. The bottom line is the break even. So it's all yellow box. So that's all extrinsic. That's what I'm saying. Whenever you have a profit of any type, you're always going to capture extrinsic. But sometimes if you get a bigger profit, like for instance, if it closes up here, you'll capture some of it as intrinsic. And if you get a full profit, you get more intrinsic. But that's why you could use pretty reliably, just use a ratio and figure it out. It's about 80 to 90%. And I'll keep on top of all that stuff and make sure that's still correct. Let's look over here at the NDX, my little favorite one, because I'm just obsessed with tech stocks in Silicon Valley and that kind of stuff. All right, so NDX, we're looking at a full profit right now. Here's an example. Look at how that profit box isn't super tall. And look at how like this profit box right here was kind of short. And this one was really short. This is because as the NDX is appreciating, the premiums and the option premiums are getting smaller and harder to come by. And this is normally the way it works, which is kind of a good trade-off because at least the market's going up. So this means your NAV isn't in any type of problem if the market goes up every day. But your premium that you capture may not be as much. So there's a trade-off for everything. All right, so let's look at the spreadsheet. Okay, the NDX spreadsheet's on the new spreadsheet, and you saw it. It updates semi-live there. It's a little bit behind, but live-ish, let's call it. But anyway, in this number right here that they're going for, 1.4 million, what changes if the live price gets under the, if gets inside the box. And then you'll see, yesterday I saw this number go from like $1 million up to $1 million down, and then it closed at $400,000. But what I'm cheerleading, what I'm looking at, is I'm looking at this number, how many dollars they earned, and the only reason that's really important is because it affects the capture percentage, and that's the whole deal to me. Jay said he wanted to capture 25% on average a day. You can take 0.25, or not 25%, 0.25%, you multiply that by 250 and you get like 66 or something. All right, so but let's look at the NDX. They're going for a half a point capture today, more than half a point capture. That would be insane. Now let me show you. Let's calculate. Let's do this real quick. Let's calculate how much the NDX would pay if it paid today, or I should say the QQQYs. So we're going to take an average, and I really should take out the 58 since we haven't earned it yet, but it's not that big of a deal. Just take an average. So it's 0.21. So we're going to take that number. We're going to multiply 250 times 0.21. All right, and then it's going to be 53% once we switch that to percentage. So 53% is not bad, but I sure do like the IWMY's 153% better, or whatever it was. All right, guys, sorry this update went a little off the rails and longer, but I wanted to address the intrinsic versus extrinsic, but I am working constantly to make the spreadsheets more user-friendly, and if I have one person that's asking about the intrinsic and extrinsic, I know that I have probably 10 people that also want it and just haven't said anything. So I will start talking about it more, especially towards the end of the month. But for daily cheerleading, capture percentage, and maybe earnings per share if you're a dollars and cents type guy. I don't even know where earnings per share is on this spreadsheet yet. I'm not good at reading this spreadsheet. All right, well, very good. You guys have a good day, and I'll talk with you after the market closes. We'll tally up exactly where we ended up. Thank you very much.